Tonight on the All Kinds of Weather forecast, Neil Schulman joins the show to break down his reaction to the Kentucky Wildcats game and where the Gators go from here as the season continues. This is the All Kinds of Weather forecast. And welcome into another episode of the All Kinds of Weather forecast. I am your host, Chris Yanes. Joining me tonight, Neil Schulman, back from the great land of New Jersey. We are so happy he made it back. And Neil, as a Philadelphia Eagles fan, so sorry, actually not so sorry about your New
No, you're
York
not.
Giants.
No, you're not.
But I am so glad to be talking about Gator football. At least the Gators are doing slightly better than your Giants right now. And if you are not already following along on our show and watching us here on YouTube, make sure to go ahead and smash that subscribe button down below. It is free to do so. It costs you nothing to do it. So go ahead and take those 2 seconds, scroll down, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button on this show, leave a comment, your reaction to the Gators win over the Kentucky Wildcats. And if you haven't already, go back and watch the instant recap show of that dropped earlier this week. A lot of good content in there, some nuggets breaking down the stats of the game and the overall just tenor of what the program is at this point in the season. But Neil's going to be talking about that. He's going to be talking about his new article. If you're not already reading that, go on allkindsofweather.com and read that. And of course, we need to shout out our sponsors here. The All Kinds of Weather forecast is proudly sponsored by not one, but two great partners of ours. First, shouting out 401k Generation, the wealth management company that helps you invest today for your future tomorrow. Their team of advisors is committed to providing guidance and education for your 401k plan and its participants. And they also offer you a range of enrollment solutions tailored to meet the unique needs of your company's 401k plan. Whether it's saving for your child's college, investment advice, or even your retirement, 401k Generation's team of advisors makes getting to know you their top priority. Their advisors will tailor a path to assist you in navigating life's financial milestones and reaching your financial goals. 401k Generation, building stronger futures one generation at a time. For more information, contact them at 866 998 5879 or visit their website at 401kgeneration.com. And we want to shout out the official apparel partner of the All Kinds of Weather forecast, Heads and Tails.
Now
Are
I
you a
can
big
do
fan?
the thing, the gesture.
Welcome. Yeah, Neil is I hope all of you guys are if you're watching on YouTube, Neil is sporting the Heads and Tails logo hat. I got the reversible swamp hat that debuted during homecoming weekend, and he's also got the Horns legend Standing Albert fighting Gator polo. Make sure to go get that on heads and at theheadsandtails.com. South Tampa's ultimate destination for all Gators. For nearly 30 years, Heads and Tails has been the go-to shop for Gators merchandise, apparel, and gifts. Whether you're looking for your latest jerseys, stylish hats, or unique memorabilia, Heads and Tails has got you covered. They hand select only the highest quality styles and brands, ensuring you can truly champion your team with pride. In July 2023, families came together to continue the legacy of Heads and Tails after it was put up for sale. They've proudly carried on this tradition, and they couldn't have done it without the amazing support from the local community. Your enthusiasm fuels their passion. And here's an exclusive offer just for you and all kinds of other weather listeners and viewers. Use the code IAKOW30 for 30% off in store or online at theheadsandtails.com. So whether you're gearing up for the next big game, decorating your home with Gator pride, or searching for that perfect gift, Heads and Tails is here for you. Visit them today and experience the excitement of being a Florida Gators fan because at Heads and Tails, they believe in celebrating your team every day.
Chris,
Well,
not, I mean, we won't include what I'm about to say in every single ad read moving forward, but I do know that we have some FSU fans watching, listening, who just like to get the other side's perspective. I do believe that they make FSU apparel too. So if you're one of those Knowles, you can be catered to by this partner of ours as well, no?
absolutely. Yeah. If you are an FSU fan that's here to troll us, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe button before you leave here watching, but also head over to the headsandtails.com and buy some of that Knoll gear. You know, we want to be able to, call the 1 and 6 team out as we can identify you on the streets. So, but they do, they sell that memorabilia there. And if also you're a Tampa sports fan, they sell Rays, Bucks, as well as Tampa Bay Lightning. So they've got you covered, but really, really thankful for this partnership, and we couldn't be more excited for some of the things to come from that. So certainly make sure to use that code IAKOW30 for 30% off in store or online. All right, Neil, we got that taken care of. Let's talk some game here. Let's talk about the Gators win over Kentucky. Want to get your thoughts on that, and then also kind of talking about really where we are at this point in the season. We're past the halfway point. We're going into the last 5 games. The vaunted gauntlet that everybody identified months ago is upon us. How are we feeling? Like, what is your reaction first to the Kentucky game, and then we'll talk a little bit more in depth about kind of what all that means for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thought is you and I identified this schedule as being comprised of two parts. There's the easy half, and then there's the harder half. Not really half and half. It's the first 7 games and then the last 5. But we said that Florida had to be 5-2 heading into Jacksonville if they wanted any real momentum, and Napier really wanted any shot to keep his job. Well, they didn't do that. They failed to hit that metric. They're 4-3. I will also say that the last 5 games now consists of 4 games the Gators should probably lose as opposed to 5. Because as you alluded to, FSU is really, really bad. So what that means is the Gators' goal of 7-5 that we both said, I think we agreed on that, right? We both said 7-5. That's
I
still
said
very much.
6-6, but it depended on how it looked, and I've reserved the right now to say we've got to get to 7-5
Yeah, no, that all right. So the how it looks argument's way out the window.
out the
Tennessee
window.
erased that, not to mention getting embarrassed by Miami and Texas A&M on your home field, no less.
I would say A&M and Miami erased that for me. I've been out on this
Yeah.
for over a month.
So yeah, so the how it looks caveat to being generous and allowing this results, to allowing the record to be 1 game worse than we otherwise pinpointed at is gone. That's out the window. So for me, it now has to be 8-4. I said 7-5 contingent on how
Oh,
it looks. I said if the 7-5 looks good, if they're close losses, if the Gators don't self-destruct on special teams, I'll take 7-5. Well, they've done all that. They've been blown out. They've handed a game away. The special teams was responsible for another loss. That's already gone. So now I need 8-4. But that's going to be very difficult. But Chris, the Gators have beaten Georgia before when they're not expected to. LSU is at home. Ole Miss is at home. FSU is terrible. And Texas is probably a loss because that's a true road game, and we're not Georgia. So we're not going to go on the road and win that game. I made peace with that. But win the other games, and there you are. It's not an easy road, but it's still in the realm of possibility, however slight that possibility may be.
yeah, I mean that would include 3 upsets, 2 against currently ranked top 10 teams in the country, 2 teams that are vying for a bid to the SEC title game, and 2 teams that could still wind up in the college football playoff if they don't wind up in the SEC title game. So it's quite the gauntlet ahead for Florida, and we'll get into the odds of that. I actually broke down the percentage numbers based on the updated ESPN FPI. I mean, Neil, I think ESPN FPI has actually given the Gators the best chance to win this matchup, and probably since 2020 when we actually won the game. I don't know if anybody's gone. I alluded to it in the last show, but Florida has a 1 in 5 chance of winning this game, just slightly over 20%. So I'm saying there's a chance based on the metrics, based on the power rankings out there. Florida is a sneaky good power ranking team. They have actually been in the top 25 now for 2 consecutive weeks, despite the loss to Tennessee, and certainly maintain that and even went up in the power rankings slightly after the Kentucky win. So this is a team by the power rankings that should be a top 25 team. And before the season, we said they could be 7-5 and really be a top 15 team just because of the difficulties of the schedule. I think since we've mentioned now that that's long gone and out the window on that. But give me some of your thoughts on this game because, in my opinion, and I said this in the recap, this was the best, most complete game Florida had played, minus the special teams thing. I know you'll talk about that, and as you showed it, you cannot give up kick returns like that the way we did, no matter who it is. And obviously, you know, Kentucky has actually some pretty good specialists on their team. But still, the most complete game that Florida's has put together all season. What did you think about that?
So, I mean, you touched on the special teams. Yeah, that's bad. I'm going to go a different direction with my concern here. I don't really want to be the guy who just naturally looks to throw cold water on things after the most complete game this team has played all year. So, Chris, let me just ask you, would you agree that the number of yards Kentucky's offense gains is an important statistic? Would you agree?
It depends if I'm Dan Mullen or not.
Okay, well, you're an objective Gator fan who is looking at trying to gauge whether or not the Florida Gators are that good to beat Kentucky by 4 touchdowns, or the Kentucky Wildcats are that bad to lose to Florida by 4 touchdowns. Would you say that the number of yards Kentucky gains is an important statistic?
Sure. I mean, it's good to look at that, and style matters, like we've talked about.
Sure. Okay. So would you agree that then that the number of yards that Florida gave up to Kentucky relative to the number of yards that other teams gave up to Kentucky is important?
Yes.
Okay. So with that said, here has been the output for the Kentucky offense in its 7 games this year. Southern Miss, 317 yards. South Carolina, 183 yards. Georgia, 284 yards. Ohio, this is the anomaly. They're the Ohio Bobcats, 488 yards. Ole Miss, 336 yards. Vanderbilt, 322 yards. Florida, 311 yards. The average for those 7 games is 319.9 yards per game. That is 115th out of 133 teams in the FBS. I don't think I even need to rhetorically ask you that when I think we agree that that's really, really bad. Now,
It's bad.
Kentucky's defense has been solid, and DJ Lagway and Jaden Ball lit them up, and we will absolutely touch on that. But this is why I'm not turning cartwheels over the win. Because if you throw out Southern Miss and Ohio, those are bad group of 5 teams. Other 5 games remaining were against SEC competition. The average yards per game for Kentucky's offense against those 5 SEC opponents was 287.2 yards per game. Florida sits a good bit beneath that average, not significantly so, but clearly so, with 311 yards per game. Clearly worse than the average. So that's the first takeaway I have. Did Florida look better as a team? Yes, they did, but a lot of that has to do with the quality of the opponent. So, yeah, that's a great win for Florida because, you could have lost to this team with the 115 ranked offense. You could have, not torched their defense, but this is not the kind of team that Florida needs to be beating in order to get themselves back to the stages that the Florida Gators need to be on. So, sorry to be the negative Neil again, but that's just the initial takeaway. This is not a great team, and Florida did what they were supposed to do, so they get a check as opposed to a parade.
Yeah, I mean, look, the standard at Florida is to beat Kentucky on a regular basis, and that was our gripe with the fact that we were even in the middle of a 3-game losing streak to Kentucky over the last couple of seasons. So, the fact of the matter is, from a program perspective of historical significance, Florida should be beating Kentucky regardless of everything of the result here and how it looked and the amount of yards they've given up. But nonetheless, we had talked about it in the preview of this game that Kentucky's offense was reeling. Their passing game was non-existent. It showed up in this game. They were 12 of 32 from passing in this one, 165. Their running game wasn't there in this game at all, 146 yards on the ground. They had about 4 yards a carry, but certainly this was not the game that Mark Stoops wanted to play. Mark Stoops wanted to play the grounded and pounded, control the line of scrimmage, and he wasn't able to do that. And that's why he hasn't been able to really set up the pass in this game as well as other games this season. So, I mean, I get your point. I think that you still have to give the defense credit, though, in this key category, and that is takeaways.
Oh,
Three
sure.
tur- three
But I'm
turnovers,
glad you brought that up. I'm
three
glad you.
turnovers, three
Okay.
turnovers, 3 interceptions. That is by far the best. We have not seen a Gators defense do that. Get multiple takeaways, win the turnover margin by not just one but two in this one. And I had mentioned before the Tennessee game that was going to be a key for me that Florida had to be +2 in the turnover margin. They did it in this game finally. So in that respect, I like the fact that they were able to get those takeaways. And one more point that I will bring up: 4 of 13 on third down conversions in Kentucky and 1 of 5 on fourth downs in the short yardage situations. Florida was very good. So they put a lot of good things on tape here. Obviously, from the perspective of the SEC matchup at Florida, 311 yards is not a very good output, regardless. So at the bare minimum, Florida at least did not let Kentucky have an offensive explosion where over they were well over 400 yards and far surpassing their average on the season. So they pretty much did what they needed to do to be able to put Kentucky at bay here.
So Florida, I mean, the way I would put that, you can talk about this as the glass half full versus the glass half empty. The way you did it was more positive. The way I'll put it the way I will phrase it is a really, really, really bad Kentucky offense was produced, or a really, really, really bad Kentucky offense produced another data point that very much aligns with the other four that they have produced this season against SEC teams. The pattern of them being terrible on offense continued for a fifth game. But I'm glad you brought up the turnovers because there's a difference between the Gator defense forcing it, like putting a helmet on the ball and knocking it out, or just punching it out, or pressuring the quarterback to force a bad decision, or jumping the route like Cormani McLean jumped the route. That was kind of lazy, but okay, he jumped the route. That's him creating one as opposed to it being given to him. But let's go late in the first half. It's second and long. Ball's on Kentucky's own 28. Brock Vandegrift has a wide open Barryon Brown who has found a big seam in the Florida defense for an easy chunk play. It's at least a 20-yard gain if he catches the ball. Probably because of the room he has there to operate, it's probably more like a 25-yard gain. He could probably fall down at the Florida 47 or so. Not only does he not catch the ball, in which he has created big time separation for himself to catch it and keep going, not only does he not catch it, he tips it right to Devin Moore, who returns it 45 yards inside the Kentucky 10. That's not Florida making a play as much as Florida being handed a gift. Like, here you go, take it. And
Right place,
Florida
right time.
doing
Yeah.
it. And Florida, but like I said, Florida could have declined the gift. Like Tennessee gave Florida a lot of gifts in that game. Florida declined to take them. The Gators, to their credit, took it. They said, okay, we'll take it. Thank you very much. Let's go for a ride down the sidelines. Devin Moore inside the 10-yard line, touchdown. So the Gators get credit for that. But that's not really the kind of game tape that makes me go, oh yeah, all right, we're ready for Georgia now. We're ready to do battle with Ohio State and Texas and those and Oregon and those types of teams that we have to see if we're going to ever compete for a national championship. That's just, well, okay, any competent SEC team or any competent Power 5 team would do the same thing. I mean, Devin Moore caught the ball, great. He should. He's on scholarship at Florida, but okay, he did. But again, that's just not a good team that you're
Kentucky
facing on the other
execute.
sideline as opposed to you forcing it.
Kentucky failed to execute, whereas a lot of these teams ahead of us will likely make that execution. That's the difference. And I think that's kind of to the point you're getting to is that Kentucky has lacked execution all season on the offensive side of the ball, like they have in recent years. And in this situation, because of their lack of execution, it resulted in takeaways for the Florida Gators.
Yeah, I mean, Arian Smith of Georgia is going to make that catch, and he's probably going to make a guy miss and take that for another 10, 15 yards after the catch. That's the
Yep.
difference between Georgia and Kentucky. Don't be fooled by that 13-12 score when they played. Georgia is a much different animal than Kentucky. And I think if the Gators are ready for that game and they play well, you'll see it in the form of Florida making plays versus Florida being handed plays.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And, I mean, at the end of the day, Georgia, to their credit, like good teams, like elite teams do, when they struggled at the beginning of the season, have now started to find their stride post Alabama, going to Texas, number one Texas, winning that game by 2 scores, dominating the first half like they did. And they didn't even really play their A game. And if you actually look at the stat line
Yeah, they
from
did.
Carson Beck, was not very good whatsoever. I expect 2 weeks here of bye week time for them. So they're going to show up in Jacksonville ready to play. And Kirby, we all know this is his Super Bowl when we play them. We'll certainly preview that game when the time comes. But Neil, I do want to get to some positive things because I know you have some positive things to say about this performance. Would you agree, though, that the defense is playing much better than they were at the beginning of the season to now? And at least there has been some adjustments on the part of the defensive coaching staff.
I think that is very possible. I think, again, that this defense that we saw looked a lot better because they faced the 115th ranked offense as opposed to the Miami Hurricanes or the Heisman Trophy candidate. Or, I mean, even if you want to take a step down from that, Marcel Reed on his first ever start for Texas A&M, We haven't faced a real true dual threat quarterback. Nico Iamaleava does not count. He did not impress me in the slightest bit. Also, he struggled against Arkansas and Oklahoma, so that's not going to cut any ice with me. Let's see how Florida does against Carson Beck. He's not a dual threat, but he's a true
Yeah.
threat as a passer. He's a real downfield attacking machine. Let's see how they do against Quinn Ewers. Let's see how they do. Not that Garrett Nussmeier is anything close to Jaden Daniels, but let's see how the Gators do against him. And let's see how the Gators do against Jackson Dart and Ole Miss. The Gators look like that. I see game tape like that against those types of teams. Yeah, sure. I'll agree the Gators are playing a lot better, but I'm not going to say that based on the fact that Florida played a much weaker opponent than the types of opponents that were shredding them early in the season.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, let's move to the offensive side of the ball. I think we're going to start to hear a little bit more positives out of you on this
Yes, we
one.
will. Yes, we
So
will.
let's talk about that. DJ Lagway. What if I were to tell you that he was only able to complete, Florida was only going to complete 8 passes in this game? I mean, I
Well,
don't think a
it
lot of
helps. It
people,
helps when half of them go for 40 plus yards, right?
well, that's the point I was getting to, but I'm just saying if you look straight at that statistic, 8 of 15 passing for an entire 60-minute game, I think most Gator fans would have been like, "Oh no." So Billy Napier was fired the next day. We lost that game because we talked. I mean, I know I talked about it in the preview of this game. I felt that Florida had to hit a lot of explosives in the passing game to make this a style game that Mark Stoops didn't want to play. Mark Stoops likes playing the rugged game, likes playing the ground it and pound it. He wasn't able to do that because of those 7 passes.
Yeah,
5 of them went for 40 yards or more. I mean,
that's an
DJ
insane
Lagway is an elite
statistic.
company now at the University of Florida.
I mean, DJ Lagway. This is what I'll say to everyone who goes, "Well, if you fire Napier, you're going to lose DJ Lagway. Do you really want that?" The response to that being, you don't ever keep a
Yeah.
coach to keep a recruit or to keep a recruiting class for that matter. But I get it. I understand why. DJ Lagway is special. There's just no way to put it other than that. He is a physical specimen of an athlete. Some of the throws he made weren't even good fundamentals. Like they were horrible fundamentals, and he puts the ball right where it has to be with pinpoint accuracy. I don't understand how he does that with his
Imagine,
body, and the ball is
imagine another
right where it has to
season.
go. Like that's incredible
Yeah.
that he can do that. I mean, the one to Elijah Badger, one of his many to Elijah Badger. I mean, I saw the fundamentals on replay. I mean, that's one of the few things I will say I actually enjoy about not being in the swamp itself. I can see the highlights immediately and the replays immediately. The fundamentals were awful. And the ball could not have been teleported any more accurately. Like that's how you know you have something really, really special at quarterback
And
there. And he
Neil,
deserves all the credit in the world for that.
talk about the fundamentals. What specifically you're talking about?
Well, I
Footwork.
mean, he's not set. Is
Yeah.
some one of those he's not set. Like he's backpedaling on one of them. He's like kind of
Yep.
falling backwards, and then he just fires a rainbow that lands exactly where it has to go, right in the hands of Elijah Badger.
Yep.
I mean, how do you do that?
Yep. The similar situation, he was sort of backpedaling even kind of on the throw to Eugene Wilson on that first drive.
Yeah,
And I mean,
right.
but he was still able to put enough touch and timing on the ball for Wilson to run underneath it and make the catch. I
Which is
mean,
insane because
out of this world.
there was a Kentucky defender in the vicinity. Not that he's gonna ever catch Eugene Wilson if the two of them line up in a 40-yard dash. Like that's just not fair. But Wilson can run himself open. But at the time that Lagway threw it, he really wasn't. Or like a split second before he throws the ball, Wilson's not that open. He is maybe a half of a step. And then like mid-flight of the ball, between the point in which Lagway lets it go and the point in which Wilson opens his hands to accept the ball, like mid-flight, there's another 2 or 3 steps of separation gained that's then given up because he has to adjust for the ball in midair. But that's another example of unbelievable physical talent right there from Lagway. And then from Wilson to not only slam his foot in the ground and suddenly push off it to create himself a couple steps of space, then to adjust and go from speedy guy mode, like go from just pure 40-yard dash, zoom, zoom, meet, meet mode to ball mode. Ball's in the air, ball skills, go up and get it. And he does. And that's not an easy play to make, especially at night when the lights are bright. And I mean, you sometimes don't even know where you are, is all you know is the ball is coming down at you. And you don't really know in that split second where the sideline is, where the defender who was just covering you is. Is there another defender who's going to take my head off in 2 seconds? And you just go up and get the ball and fight off any and all other elements. So great job by both of them on that play. And then, I mean, Badger too down the stretch did that a couple of times as well. Just, I mean, really, look at me. I'm stumbling over my words because I'm so impressed with this offense, Chris. It's
Look out,
almost
look,
like it's
I've been able to take you from a negative to a positive just like that in one segment. I
it's
love it.
it's almost like when you use the more talented option at quarterback, good things
Yeah.
tend to happen more. And Lagway made mistakes. He made it seemed
Sure.
like a miscommunication. It seemed like someone ran the
Oh
wrong
yeah,
route.
it was definitely he threw at the wrong spot for sure on the
But
interception. So
so
he thought it was a post. It was definitely an out.
But so that's what I'm saying. Those kinds of miscommunications are going to happen when you have a younger quarterback
Yes.
more often than they're going to happen with a Graham Mertz. Whether or not it's Lagway's fault or not, you're just going to have those lapses of timing and communication happen. But you live with those regardless of who you want to blame it on because of the amazing things he can do with the ball as well.
Absolutely. No doubt about it. And really quick, I want to bring you touched on fans saying, "Oh, but if we fire Billy Napier, you're going to lose DJ Lagway." We may very well lose DJ Lagway. That is a real possibility in the era of NIL and transfer portal in college football. That is a real possibility. However, let me just say this. No coach is worth keeping for a player. But I empathize with fans of the other argument, and here's why. They have so much PTSD in this fan base from quarterbacks for whatever reason not working out at Florida, dating back to the laptop scandal where Cam Newton threw it out of the window. How many of us wish we can go back in time and keep him from doing that? To keeping Will Greer from going to GNC or wherever the heck he got his supplement that he got popped for
Ligand
PEDs.
roll.
I mean, the injuries
Jacoby
that have
Brissett.
happened, Jacoby Brissett picking over Jeff Driscoll getting hurt after he had shown improvement after in his sophomore season at the University of Florida. I mean, I go on and on and on, but it's clear Florida has an elite talent right now in their program. And I've mentioned a number of times what a great quarterback can do to transform the fortunes of a program quickly. So if Florida were able to get a coaching situation that's much more favorable for the long-term future and maintain Lagway, Florida could be off to the races and actually winning very quickly because of the elite athlete they have. But I understand the concerns because they are there. Florida is going to have to fight to keep DJ Lagway in this program if, in fact, Billy Napier is fired at some point this season. And you know what? Rightfully so, because he is a talented kid. Florida's going to have to build a team around him and show that there is a future with him there. But Florida has to get their long-term fortunes ironed out before they can even think about having more elite players in this. Because right now, they're not going to attract any more elite players. In fact, they're losing
They're
players right
losing
now.
them.
We've lost now 3 blue chip players in 3 weeks. So clearly, it doesn't matter if you have an elite player in your system already. If you're not winning enough games and you don't have the right coach for the future, you're not going to attract the recruits that you need.
No, you're not. And at this point, Florida's recruiting class is not even in the top 50 of the
Yeah.
country.
It's
So,
51 on 247 and 33 on On3. On3 ranks it a little bit differently, but
yeah.
to your point.
Okay. But I mean, I like the composite ranking because it does matter how many recruits you have. Now, I understand that eventually, like, let's just play this out. Billy Napier stays another year. The Gators are not going to only sign 5 guys. There are going to be some takes that you probably reach into your B pool. You probably don't take them ordinarily if you get the guys you really want. So you have to settle for some takes. That's going to inflate your average a little bit on 247. But ultimately, the state of the program right now is not where it's supposed to be. Beating the Kentucky Wildcats for the first time since the coronavirus pandemic is not cause for celebration. It is cause for, okay, you check the box. You managed to un-F up the situation that you've effed up the last 4 years by losing to a team that clearly does not have the same caliber of talent as you do all these years in a row. You've fixed that situation, but you don't get a cookie for that just because you think it's worth celebrating something, anything you can get your hands on celebrating right now. It doesn't work that way. The Gators are supposed to be Kentucky. That's it. That's the standard. That's the expectation. It's not a goal. It's not a stepping stone. It's not even a checkpoint. It's the expectation. Like the Gators score points. The Gators don't get shut out. Like that's the standard. If you kick a field goal against Oregon State, say in a bowl game, you don't clap your hands and say, "Yay, a field goal." No, you did what you're supposed to do. I mean, you probably should score more than three, but that's for a different day. The point is there are standards, and the Gators have to meet the standards. And when they do, they don't get applause. They get, okay, now do something more. Now do something more. Do something else. Do something better. Build off it.
That's a championship program.
But that's
Yep.
that's right. That's a championship mentality, and that's why the Gators are now still, even after this win over Kentucky, still staring their fourth losing season in a row square in the face.
Yep, as Neil alluded to there, Florida definitely still has that possibility. We're going to have a show later this week talking about the bye week, what Florida needs to do to get ready in that bye week for Georgia, and then kind of previewing that week ahead and certainly the perception and reality of Napier's situation going forward. So make sure that if you're not already, hit that subscribe button down below, like this show, leave a comment on your reaction for this Kentucky game and what your thoughts are going forward for the season. So Neil, let's get your final thoughts on this one, wrap it up, and then we'll call it a show.
Yeah, so final thoughts. There were positives. I know I just spent all that time talking about how it's the expectation, but there were positives. If you follow all kinds, whether on Twitter, you'll see that there were individual plays on this game tape that I do genuinely feel merit positivity. Now, I did miss being in the swamp. Like I said, it's always a great time, but it is a positive to not be there in person, to be able to watch the tape live and provide film breakdowns in real time. And I was shouting out players left and right for that. Dijon Johnson, for example, on defense. You can go to the timestamp right there, 6:40 to go in the game, creeps up towards the line of scrimmage. Offensive guys are on Kentucky are probably going, he's a cornerback, right? Is there safety? What is he doing? Is he pressing? All right, whatever. Who cares? He's just a corner. Pay him no mind. Uh-oh, no, he's not. Now he's a pass rusher. That running back trying to pick him up on the blitz never had a prayer. It's barely even a pass rush move. It's more just like a slap away of the hand, like it's a fly, completely blows up the play. Forces Vandegrift to run away from the pocket and take off for his life. Whatever route combination Kentucky had drawn up is now dead. It is a non-factor. Shout out as well to his teammate TJ Searcy to help clean it up and get the sack by luring him to the sidelines. That's a great play. That's objectively a great thing that Florida did. There were moments like that happened throughout the course of the game that I do feel gives some reason for positivity and good feelings about this team. Like Jaden Robinson, I shouted him out for one of his solo tackles. Aaron Gates had a nice play where he shed a block and made an open field tackle. There was a lot to be happy about there. But again, that's what you're supposed to do against Kentucky. I am a lot happier. I'm singing a very different tune if these plays happen against Georgia or Texas or LSU. When we
And they're
get
gonna have
there, you'll
they're
see
gonna
it.
they're gonna have to happen for us to have a chance to beat those teams. You have
Yes.
to execute. You have to make those plays at a high level against high competition in the SEC. Like,
And
yeah,
consistently, not once or
consistently.
twice, but on a consistent basis.
Yeah. And that's no different from any other team in this league. I mean, look at right now the race for the SEC. You've only got two teams that are still undefeated in SEC play. That's A&M and LSU, and they play this weekend. So there's only going to be one left. There's going to be a lot of cannibalization in this newfound SEC, that world that we live in with 16 teams. So nobody's going to be perfect. But Florida, in order to become that top half, because really right now they're sitting in that weird spot of that 8 to 12 area. It's kind of purgatory, if you will, in the SEC. You're an average mid SEC team. That's not where we want to be. We want to be in that top five, competing for an SEC championship on a regular basis. And we're going to need those plays and the execution at a high level consistently, like Neil talked about on that. So make sure to follow him on his Twitter there and all kinds of weather. He's going to be continuing to put stuff out there during these types of games.
And that's why I'm negative, as people say, because I want to win, because I want to be champions. I want the Gators to be consistently contending for championships. The first, just so everyone's clear, Dan Mullen had to be fired. The way that ended was awful, and he quit on the program, and that's just unacceptable. Recruiting season, that flipping Dave Waterston, whatever, had to be fired. The first 3 years of his tenure were perfectly fine with me. I'm not one of those guys who
Bring it
goes
back,
11
baby.
and
Bring it
2.
back. We need that
Yeah,
again.
well, but I'm saying, like, in a vacuum, if you were to erase anything else that happened before or after the McElwain Muschamp or the Zook years or even the Napier years, if you take those results in a vacuum, I'm fine with that because the Gators are entering the cocktail party with a legitimate chance at a national championship in those 3 seasons. 18,
Yep.
19, 20. That
Yep.
gets you in the playoffs. 10
Yep.
and 9 and 3. If there's a 12-team CFP, then Florida's in it. 10 and 2 in 2019. Florida's
Florida's
in the
in.
CFP with that. So I'm perfectly fine with a loss here or there. It's the fact that it's year 3 and the Gators are still just getting embarrassed at home and they just handed a game away to Tennessee that make me go, yeah, sorry, one win over Kentucky isn't good enough. That's not going to cut it and change my tune. I'm this way because I want the Gators to win championships the way I know they should.
No doubt about it. Well, Neil, I think that is about does it for this show. If you're not already, make sure to hit subscribe down below, like this show, leave a comment, your reaction to the win over Kentucky. And please, please, because subscribe to this show because we're going to have another show dropping this bye week talking about the road ahead for the Gators, their chances, the ceiling, the floor, what they could potentially do the rest of the season. So if you're not already, make sure you're following along here. Follow us on all those socials you see down there below if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're listening on all the audio formats, please rate and review the show. Leave us a 5-star review. It helps us bring Gator Nation more content. And also make sure to go on to theheadsandtails.com and shop online or in store if you're in Tampa. Use that code IAKOW30 for 30% off on your entire purchase. So from all of us here at the In All Kinds Weather Forecast, signing off from another great episode.